living well to me, it turns out, has meant, and it hasn't always been easy, especially when I was younger, has meant not being at war or at odds with my own um, preferences, desires, values, things like that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Rob Lieblein. Rob is a certified holistic life coach who specializes in helping clients recover from chronic pain and other symptoms not due to disease, injury, or infection. He brings over 2 decades of experience as a yoga teacher and mindfulness teacher to this role, along with a parallel career in outdoor and experiential education, in which he facilitates team building and group dynamics programs. Throughout his career, he's worked with adults and children of all ages from diverse backgrounds and in settings ranging from school classrooms to corporate conference rooms and sprawling floors to private video conferences. Rob sees the common thread in these diverse roles as helping others build connections with others and within themselves in order to lead fuller and more satisfying lives. Rob is a native of New York City and has lived in New York's Hudson Valley since 2000. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Broderick, great to be here. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, man. It's been a little while,
It has been.
but I'm happy that you're here to explore with me this theme of living well and what a good life looks like. What is a life worthy of living? I see you spent your time focusing on building connections, encouraging people to build connections with others and themselves. That's such a beautiful thing. Um,
Yeah, and I'm honored to be here, to be a guest on this podcast. I'm a fan, and I think that kind of sums up a theme that's been present all my life is that theme of trying to find and foster connections. Whether it's between other people, between me and other people, or within one's own self. And I think there's a lot of rich and fertile ground out there for that work to be done.
for sure. Definitely in our country, for sure, in our
Yeah.
society,
Hmm.
building connections absolutely necessary. So I know I just read the bio. Could you
Hmm.
say a little bit more, share a little bit more about yourself? Yeah,
Yeah,
and give me that
sure.
space.
I'm really happy to have had I'm grateful and blessed in a way to have had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And in particularly, I've been blessed to work with all kinds of different people, age wise, socioeconomically, culturally. That's all been a gift to me. So working with kids as young as say pre-K, up through people as old as people get. Whether it's some people who are from very privileged backgrounds to people who have very little, but still keep showing up day after day. And it's meant a lot to me over these decades now to play, even if I can play a small role in making a part of somebody's day better and giving them something to walk away with that is, even if it's just a seed that they can plant to make their own lives better, share that with other people. That's kind of what's been driving me, and that hasn't always been explicit at the front of my mind. But as I get older and well into middle age now, I think I'm starting to become more reflective about that and looking at patterns that I've noticed in myself, and that's something that stands out for me. So I
Mhm.
I don't overlook how lucky I am to have been in those kinds of positions to be with people in that kind of way.
Mhm. Awesome. I love that. I love how you introduce yourself or you share about yourself in terms of your love of connecting with others and seeing that as a blessing. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome, man. I think,
Thanks.
and serving others, I think we need more of that in the world. We're all where we can support each other and serve each other. I think it makes the world a better place, and to have people like yourself who revel in that, who find that it is. I love how you say you're lucky. You feel lucky that you've had the opportunity to do these types of things. So that's great, man. I think that's gonna, folks. I am suspecting that this is going to be a very interesting conversation as we explore what living well means. That's I usually ask the question in the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning here, and then we'll just play around and see what comes up as time
Yeah, yeah.
goes. So, what does living well mean to you, or what is it? What is required for, or what is a life worthy of living? I should say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I took the approach I took in preparing for our conversation together was I wanted to kind of get past just some of the immediate and obvious things that might rise up in my mind. Things I might have seen on bumper stickers or things that just kind of sound slogany, and say probe a little deeper within my own mind and see what's in there. So what I did was on three different occasions, I sat down and I did some. I just put up a prompt, "Living well," and just did some free writing on whatever dumped out of my mind for 20 minutes, without editing, without trying to create anything other than what was coming out moment by moment by moment. And I was pretty, some things I had expected would have come out, and some things were a little more surprising, and I might not have thought about them before. So that in itself, I think, was a good exercise for me to go through. And yeah, I think I'll start with a couple of the things that did come out in that mind dump, and we can see where that takes us, because that there was no shortage of material. But one of the things that stood out for me, and I've kept coming back to over and over again, is that living well, to me, it turns out, has meant, and it hasn't always been easy, especially when I was younger, has meant not being at war or at odds with my own um, preferences, desires, values, things like that. And by that I mean, I think I was driven a lot in my younger days by what I thought other people's expectations of me would be. Now, whether or not those were the expectations, and I think quite often they weren't other people's expectations, but they were my thoughts on their expectations.
Mm.
Um, and that led me to not the easiest life as a young adult, because I kind of pushed away some of my gut feelings and pursued a career in advertising, which which wasn't the best place for me to be. But I got out of college in the late '80s. It was a time when Wall Street was big and the pursuit of money was big, and I knew I didn't want to be a banker. Knew I wasn't going to go into engineering, anything like that. Wasn't going to work on Wall Street. But I said, let me go into a field that still has maybe some of what I'm attracted to, which is, I was thinking of advertising as sort of a creative field, but is also a quote unquote legitimate business, right? Where I can feel legitimate in that little sector of the world, um, as a professional. And so I was essentially, fitting myself as a square peg into a round hole, and um, and it took me a while to realize just how how contrary to my inner soul, my inner life, my inner values, all of that was. And, it's not to say that that's not the right path for somebody else, but for me, it certainly wasn't. So that's when I sort of started making some pretty big changes in my life, including that career change was a big one. And I left that and into went back to grad school. Always loved education. What I liked most about being in advertising was when I got to train new people. So there was that element there of connection and helping somebody move forward in something that maybe was meaningful to them. And I took a very different direction. So I went into the field of environmental and outdoor education. Found out I really loved working outdoors, loved being out in nature, loved working with kids, working with teachers. Um, and that just felt to me like it was so much more aligned with what I really wanted in life, what I really cared about. And it was hard work because I had a lot to learn, and it was a new, the learning curve was steep. It was a new field for me. Um, as you probably know, anybody who thinks that the teaching of any kind is easy is sorely mistaken.
Oh, no.
But it never felt, even on the toughest days, it never felt to me like it was like I just wanted to get the heck out of there. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm here, I'm invested. This this is something that could feel really hard and off-putting, but it's not, because there's that deep core of love for what I'm doing. So learning to trust my own gut and not trying to read other people's minds, and stay within who I am has staying within who I am has made things a lot easier for me in so many ways, I think. And nobody's had a problem with that. It's not like I'm not meeting other people's expectations, right? So a lot of that was just on me, and I think that was really an important revelation. And even if it wasn't a revelation, it was at least an experiment, right? Try doing this, scary as it is. Try doing
Mm-hmm.
this, and and see what happens. And the experiment turned out all right. Um, Became much easier to wake up in the morning. I enjoyed the interactions I had with people a lot more, and I definitely consider myself an introvert. Um, However, looking back at all of those, what we said in the introduction about connection with other people, fostering connections among people, having people connect with themselves, having me connect with myself, it's kind of, I guess I've always been intrigued. Something that has intrigued me about myself is how the introvert has always been drawn to this connection, right? Not a withdrawal from
Mm-hmm.
connection, but finding ways to connect and be in connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Do you want to add something else to that, or you're?
Yeah, I think another thing. I don't know if you want to, if you have any questions that you wanted to ask, or any kind of response or thoughts on what I just said, before I move
Yeah,
on to another thing that came from that brain dump. But
yeah.
I think
No,
I
yeah,
think I will, Broderick. I think I will say one more thing about that, because I went back pretty far in life, to my early days growing up on my street in Queens in New York City. And there were enough kids at that time. There were enough kids on the block, around my age, that I didn't have to go off the block to find people to play with, whether we were playing a game of wiffle ball in the street, or any other, hide and seek, whatever it might be. All the games that we played as kids. And so there was community within that one small block right there, and it went beyond just the kids that I was hanging out with, many of whom were also older, and invited me into their group. I was able to
Mm,
learn a lot from them and see how they interacted with each other. So I had good role models there, but also on that block, everybody seemed to know everybody. The neighbors all knew who I was. I wasn't anonymous. Sometimes I wish I was, because it might have been a little too visible at times. But looking back on that, I say, that was something really special to have that community in such a small space. That Yeah, I don't know how often that happens anymore. That
mm-hmm,
maybe I'm romanticizing it, but I don't think so. I think that there was some real connection and real community in that
mm-hmm,
in that place. And maybe even as an introvert back then, I was instilled with the value of having that sort of connection and sense of place and sense of being in place
mm.
when I was there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up two things. I know you're going to bring up some more, but yeah, I'll go ahead and chime in. The reason why I asked you that, I thought you were about to say something else, so I was going to allow you to go ahead because I try to let people
Hmm.
speak and just say whatever
Yeah, yeah.
on their minds. Let it flow out.
Hmm.
But I think you said something that's very interesting. I think is a very valuable message to all of us is to reevaluate why we are doing what we're doing, and are we doing it because we really want to, I mean, I guess not just because we really want to, because we can really want to do something that is not necessarily best for us, because we've been conditioned to believe that, or conditioned to do those things. I think to question the choices that we're making is an important piece of living a good life in general, and then also from that exploration and that questioning, am I living what I really am I doing what I really want to do? Am I living out my calling, or am I doing something to satisfy what I've been conditioned to do? Like,
Hmm.
oh, go out and get a job making money because that's the most important thing is
Right.
to make money. That is priority. And now I am definitely not saying making money is problematic. It's not. It's good to make
Hmm.
money. You have to in the
Yeah.
world we live in.
Hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily need to be the thing that drives or motivates us to act in the world. And the example that you gave was in your own life. You took this advertising job because and I'm glad you offered the context. I love the story because
Hmm.
context really means something. That the time period that we um, are experiencing, the environment that we're in, all of those are impinging on us, and those things are going to impact our decision making, the choices that we make,
Hmm.
um, the choices about our own life, and the things that we're going to do to support us, and a career choice, as in your case, to choose advertising, but that wasn't really where your heart was, and you basically did it because like it's just the right thing to do according to
Hmm.
society. I'm sure. How about
Right.
your
Right.
parents? How did your parents? Did you feel pressure or encouraged by your parents to go out and do the responsible thing and make money?
No, in fact, it was,
Oh
some
wow.
some of my frustration looking back is that it was just the opposite. My parents were
Oh,
they were pretty
oh.
wide open to whatever I wanted to do, and I give them a lot of credit for that, because they weren't in quite that same position, right? Of a previous generation. My
Mm,
dad was born. He lived through, I guess, he was born around the end of the Depression. So his mindset was totally different growing up, where you didn't have the luxury or the privilege of being able to choose a lot of different things. I mean, he did wind up going into a profession. He went into international banking, and he did well. At the end of, he was in his last job of his career for 20 years, And he
Mm.
said that when he walked out the door, he never looked back once, and that also made me think, oh, is that what I want to put
Mm.
20 years, into something and then just leave it totally flat? But getting back to your point, my father and my mother, to a degree, also actively tried to dissuade me from going into advertising. They
Interesting.
didn't say don't do this, but what they said was, I guess they had some sense of the kind of person I was and what I cared about and what would make me happy, and they were kind of like, "Are you sure? Can what is it about advertising that's interesting to you? What's got you there?"
Wow, that's
And but
interesting.
at that age, I wasn't ready to hear it. So
Mm. You're lucky,
my
man.
parents have gotten wiser and wiser as I've gotten older and older.
Oh wow, that's awesome though, because I think wow, that's interesting because for a lot of people, it's the parents that pressure them into doing something that they really
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to do. In this case, I guess it's just the social pressure and the conditioning around you. And I mean, they do a good job at schools. I don't know where you were there. I know when I
Mm-hmm.
graduated college in the late '90s, you
Mm-hmm.
have the job fair, and you feel like this pressure, like, oh, I guess I should. I need to go get this job. I need to go take a
Mm-hmm.
job and
Right.
and make sure I get my career started without really, again, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily following our heart, but it's just the social conditioning and pressures that can drive us to do those things. What do you think it was for you? Was it that, or what was it that?
I think to a degree it was, because there was all of this talk about starting salaries. You go into this field, you get this starting salary. That field, that starting salary. So there was that element of pressure of just trying to kind of keep up with maybe the people around me, the messages I was getting, and it was also I think some of it was actually fear based,
Mm,
in that I had invested this time. I said this is what I was going to do, and I'll be damned if I'm going to change my mind now, because this is what I've told the world I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And it also felt like, I don't know, maybe it was also the devil I knew. Right?
mm,
I had invested the time, the mental energy, the intellectual energy into that, but I wasn't investing one big hole there. I wasn't investing what I'd call the spiritual energy into it, the soul
mm,
energy into it.
mm,
So I was conveniently ignoring that that element of it all, that
mm-hmm,
important piece of the puzzle, which now I would probably view as the first thing I should be
mm-hmm.
looking
Yeah.
at investing.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess that's a big message there. The power of fear and the whatever in our environment that or in our experiences that has conditioned that fear, it can keep us in a way of thinking, or it can. I'm trying to avoid the word force, but for lack of a better word, right now, it can
Mm-hmm.
force us into doing something that's not necessarily where our heart is. And I think that's a big important piece of the puzzle, is that you chose to pursue something against your deeper desire, and then later, in order, you realize that that an important piece of living well is to actually go and find what it is that you where your heart is. But I think a big
Mm-hmm.
piece of that too is not just doing the thing, doing what you feel like your heart is calling you to do, but that process that you went through. Because I think it's, most people probably listen to this podcast. They've probably made, not most, I don't know, but most adults in general
Mm-hmm.
have generally decided to do one thing that they didn't really want to do. But the process of self-reflection and then changing and doing something that you feel like your heart has called you to do, that's all a part of the process, I think, in living well. So for me, living well is not just simply do what you love. Yeah, great. And do what you feel
Mm-hmm.
like your calling is. Yes, great. But usually there's a process for that. Usually we don't start off there. Usually we're in a situation
Yes.
where we're like,
Mm-hmm.
is this really what I'm doing? And so questioning, like you did, questioning
Mm-hmm.
ourselves and seeing what is my what are my true values here, and how can I live my life in a way that supports that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree for sure. And one of the one of the things that comes up for me, hearing you say that, is that I would be a much different person right now if I had gone straight into maybe something that was a little more suitable to my temperament. And maybe it's all hindsight, right? But maybe I would have been happy for those happier for those years, but maybe I wouldn't have been compelled to do as much of the inner work that was necessary to kind of extract myself from that situation and really find out what it was that turned me on and helped light me up in my life, and
Yeah.
to kind of give myself that lesson that yeah, it is possible to make the change, and it is possible to take those risks, and failure is not the end of the world, right?
No.
We hear that all the time, right? First
Yeah.
attempt in learning. That's what fail stands for.
I love it. That's a great one. First attempt and learn.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and not be afraid of that. And that's another important piece of living well, right? Living well is
Mm-hmm.
the process. I think a little bit where what I'm hearing, and yeah, doing what you love and finding out those things, but that going through the process of discovering that is a good life, is a life worthy of living. Sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
think of the good life as just the outcomes, but the process is in a way of being in the world is in a way of becoming in the world is super important. It's not just the outcome.
I
Yeah.
agree, and it's and
Yeah.
it really is all process, right? Like what
Mm-hmm.
an
Right.
outcome is just the beginning of more process, I think,
Yeah. That's
right?
true. That's so true. Yeah.
Because like when are you ever there? Um,
Right.
with anything. I mean, I guess you can chunk up your life into certain goals, right? I
Mm-hmm.
have the house. I have a job I like. I went on a vacation that I really liked. I've gotten those things. I've gotten the degree. I've got someone I love. But those things aren't just rock solid end stopping points, right? They're not hard stops.
Yeah.
They're bound to change, and
Yeah.
we're going to change with them, and that's all just more process, I think.
Well, I love that. I love a lot of what you're saying here. But yeah, let's tease out some more. I think that you had some more things on your list there. Let's see what else you got cooking there,
Okay,
Rob.
yeah, I guess related to that was one of the things that I've learned to appreciate more in life is the value of being uncomfortable. And I
Mm,
think I've come to, in a way, like putting myself in positions where I'm at least somewhat uncomfortable, not panicked, right? But that's the growth zone, and I think a lot of that has come from my work done in experiential education, group dynamics, team building. Right, the common wisdom there is that if you're too comfortable, you're not growing. So I actually started making that sort of a mantra to myself and taking those steps deliberately out of the comfort zone. There are times of course, like anybody else, I like to be comfortable, but too much time in that comfort zone kind of makes me feel a little restless, I guess, and wanting to take that step out of my comfort zone. So that might be, if I'm at a conference for a few days, not sitting in the same seat every day, or not having the same, not rolling out my yoga mat in the same spot in the studio each time I go, moving around. But it can also be in taking on, new career shifts, following that process of what I'm doing. So moving from environmental education and bringing on the contemplative practice piece, and then moving into coaching. And I'm just starting now to make myself uncomfortable, really uncomfortable now. I'm going to be starting a YouTube channel for my coaching business. So I
Mm.
have very little experience in that space doing videos, but it's kind of exciting to be taking that on to help get the word out about something again that's really meaningful to me and that I want to share with people. So if the price is a little bit of discomfort, but the reward back is that, you know, more opportunity to help people, then that's a trade off I'll take any day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that sense of that sense of satisfaction, I think, that can come with doing something that you know makes you uncomfortable, or I'll phrase it in first person, doing something I know makes me uncomfortable, and coming through it either having succeeded and saying, wow, look what I was able to do. Who knew that could actually be fun? Or if
Mm.
it goes sideways, then maybe they say, okay, there's a lesson there. Maybe that wasn't for me, and it's another learning opportunity. But it's the shot that I took, and something came out of it one way or the other, and I'm still living and breathing, and people who love me still love me,
Yeah.
and that's really guided me. That sort of pursuit of a little bit of discomfort. And I think that sometimes it can be easy to get persuaded or into the mindset that living well equals, living without discomfort, without pain, without challenging emotion, more the pursuit of, a certain kind of happiness that tries to avoid, that only seeks out pleasure and tries to avoid anything that's challenging. And that's not that might have been what I was initially looking for way back in the day. It's like, oh, I just want to feel relaxed in my own skin. But it's so much more than that. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it can be easily misconstrued one for the other, where living well isn't just a sort of saccharine kind of happiness. It involves the whole range of human experience.
Yeah.
Right? What was that movie? Inside Out. Was
Yeah.
that the
Right.
name of it? Yeah, yeah, right. You
Yeah.
got to have those challenging emotions and challenging times to be complete. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
mm-hmm,
I love it. You. That's interesting that you brought up your choice to go into advertising, and you thought that was going to be the pleasurable path. Like, oh, it's going to make it easy. I'm going to make a lot of money.
mm-hmm,
Things will be a little easier for me. In actuality, it wasn't.
right.
And that, and how you're talking about discomfort, suffering. Suffering is a
Mm-hmm,
part of life,
right.
and a lot of things that you mentioned going into education. You're right. Teaching is not. You talking about being uncomfortable. You're
Mm-hmm.
intentionally putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like you're saying, I'm with you because I consider myself an educator, and
Right.
it is not easy. People are like, I don't know how you do it. Well, I'm like, it's my calling. I love doing it. And yes, it's challenging. It's challenging to stand in front of people. It's challenging to figure out how to convey what it is that you're trying to share. Um, but like you're saying, there's a certain pleasure in serving others and helping another person. And service has come up again for you and keeps coming up for you, helping
Mm-hmm.
people. And this idea that we have to challenge ourselves, be uncomfortable, A little bit of suffering is going to happen when you're pursuing anything that you really want to do in life.
Right.
If
Right.
you want to be a great dancer, you need to practice dancing. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's not comfortable. You get tired. Just in dance,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain level of discomfort in the joy of dancing, for instance. And sometimes we forget that. I think we have this, I don't know how we're conditioned. I mean, I have some speculation, of course, but we've been conditioned to believe that we can live this life without discomfort, without suffering. It doesn't mean you go out and
Mm-hmm.
you just seek unnecessary suffering, but there's some necessary discomfort with pursuing anything in life, particularly if you want to learn anything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
learn anything new, well, if you don't want to be uncomfortable, you might as well just not try to learn anything, because that's just a it's a it's a
Mm-hmm.
hard thing to go to start, especially as you get older.
Yeah.
Something like music, an instrument, or something like that, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh man, this is torture. But that's just a
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of the process. That's life. A good life is having that delicate balance of discomfort and comfort, and along with some joy. And but like you said,
Mm-hmm.
in and out, some sadness going to be there, some the emotion of anger. You don't need to be an angry person going around being an
Mm-hmm.
angry person, but that emotion, that energy of anger is going to pop up at some
Right.
point in your
You need
life.
that. Mm-hmm. Right.
How are you going to
That's
channel that
fuel. And then
energy?
what do you do with
Yeah,
those challenging emotions when they come up? That's the key, right? And that's
exactly.
another piece of work to be reflected on. Are you gonna
Hmm.
as a mindfulness teacher, right? That's always top of mind for me, right? These things come
Hmm.
up. What do I do with them, right? I notice them at first, so then I'm at that point of having a choice, and
Exactly.
so am I gonna just take the autopilot path, or am I actually gonna do something that has a little more reflection behind it, a little more assessment, a little more caring to it.
Hmm.
And it's certainly
Absolutely.
not a perfect process, because I've I've skipped that choice, like anybody, like any human being, right? I'm prone to skip that choice and
I
just
don't know.
get on the express train to a
I
bad
don't know.
outcome. But
Right.
but a lot more often than more often than not, I've developed. I think I've developed that skill to be a little more discerning.
Yeah, you're not perfect, Rob. Come on now. How are you going to be coaching and teaching mindfulness if you're not perfect?
Yeah, yeah. No, nobody wants a perfect teacher, right?
I know. Some people think they
Uh,
do. They
they
think
they
they
do,
do. I'm
right?
like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, when someone is like, yeah, I got it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This was anybody who claimed to be enlightened, and whatever.
Right,
Don't
right.
get me
If you
started on
think
that.
your teacher is perfect, or whomever your
Yeah.
partner is perfect,
Or if they say
then
that
there's
they're
a whole
perfect,
other, or they say, right.
you
These might be
run.
some red flags
Run.
to look into a little more.
Yeah.
But
You
that's
know,
sort of the beauty of, I guess, the human experience, right? Is
exactly. And I think that that's I was joking with you about how you can be a coach or a mindfulness teacher, and you're not perfect. But I think that's what's important when
mm-hmm.
you acknowledge that life is a process and there are ups and downs, and it's hard sometimes, it's challenging sometimes. But those of us who engage in mindfulness, meditative or contemplative practice, um, Buddhism, yoga, the idea and the aim is, when you read the literature, is liberation from suffering.
Mm-hmm.
What I think
Yeah.
they really mean for me is the liberation from unnecessary suffering, liberation from being your attachment to suffering. Suffering is
Mm-hmm.
gonna this. I don't see how you can avoid it. And I mean, the dying process. There's some suffering that usually comes along with that. Even if
Mm-hmm.
someone who dies peacefully, usually there's health concerns if they've lived a long life. There's
Right.
pain involved. There's all kinds of things that are going on, and it doesn't take away from the person because we suffer, we have challenges, but it's how we relate to those challenges. How do we relate to the discomfort? You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
that you to live a good life is to have a little uncomfort so that you can grow, so that you can learn something.
Right.
And in life, even if we're not seeking it, it will happen. How do I take my circumstances and try to learn from them? How do I grow as a person um, as a result of the experiences that I'm having, the challenges that I am undergoing? How can I approach or relate to those challenges in a way that's going to help me gain some insight into myself, into my relationship with the world? I think that
Mm-hmm.
that is the good life. Actually, it's that
Right.
part of working through suffering to gain some insight into ourselves and into the world in general.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love that. I love that it's not just some, hedonic. We can get caught in a hedonic
Right.
cycle, and the cycle of just like
Right.
pure.
Mm-hmm.
I just want all the good experiences, and just want to do whatever I can to escape all the negative, or the challenging or the uncomfortable experiences. I just keep using that
Yeah.
phrase.
I have to wonder if there's anybody out there who's ever managed to accomplish that, and if so, what did they think of it? Because it actually doesn't sound, all that interesting. You know, there's
I just,
what
yeah,
do you have to measure your happiness against, and when do you get a chance to grow if you're in that space of just constant hedonic euphoria, whatever it might be. I don't know.
I don't know how you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are people who chase it. We chase it by our addictions to substances, our addictions to shopping, for instance. Just keep buying stuff, just keep getting that hit, that little dopamine hit every
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
time. Like, okay, I want to keep buying that satisfaction. And it's never ending. It'll never make us completely happy. How do we find joy? I think, I don't know. Well, how does this sound to you when I'm about to say? How do we find joy in the process of learning, the process of discovering through our challenges, through our discomfort? I think that there's a pleasure in that,
Yeah.
and it's hard, but to take our mind and reflect on our experience and say, okay, then this is really hard what I'm going through right now. I can focus my attention on that, and I think that that's that being
Mm-hmm.
attached or being um, trapped into suffering. And I think that's, those who practice yoga and contemplative practice, like that's the problem. But like, okay, I am suffering. This is really hard. Let me step away and take a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening in my life, and what can I gain? What can I learn from this experience? How can this transform me? What can I do about it? And there's a way to liberate ourselves from the suffering. We may not be able to take away that pain, but we can at least take away our um, what's the word, that our unhealthy relationship to my experience. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's a good life. Even
Yeah.
if from the
Yeah.
outside someone may look like, wow, this person is really struggling,
Mm-hmm.
but I say an aspect of the good life is being able to do that. Man, that is it's hard work to build that up, to be able to
It's.
do that, but man,
Mm-hmm.
that is an amazing way to approach life. And being able to do that, no matter what arises in our lives, we find a way to witness it and gather and gain some insight from those experiences. And then from that insight, if we have the capacity to do so, now, of course, there are social structures involved, the environment, the
Mm-hmm.
material world is involved. If we have the capacity to change or transform our situation based on that insight, then we do so. That is a beautiful thing, I
It
think,
is.
anyway.
It's a real, I think, a Herculean task to develop that capacity. But
Mm-hmm.
people do it. I mean, you think about people like, say, Viktor Frankl or Elie Wiesel,
Mm-hmm.
right? People who endured the Holocaust, and somehow they found a way to manage their situations internally so that they could grow from them. I think their survival was never guaranteed, and most of
Mm-hmm.
us are never, thankfully, going to be in a situation of that extreme. But they found a way, and that's inspiring to me to know that's available. And I recently took a course, participated in a course called Positive Intelligence, and
Mm.
the way they framed that very thing that you're talking about was that when something comes up, when you're feeling this suffering or an upsetness coming to you, first of all is taking that pause and recognizing it, and then say, you have an option to either accept it, even if it's just for the time being, or convert it, right? What
Mm.
can I use this experience for? Right? What can I
Yeah.
learn from it? If you don't know, then it's better to find a way to bring some equanimity to it, because the third option is to just drive yourself crazy, right? With anger, with hatred, with fear, with all of those things, right? That's a really unproductive footing to take in those situations.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it comes back to remembering to go through those steps and being okay with them.
Mm-hmm. Process again, right? It's
Yeah,
all a
yeah.
process.
It's
If it's all a process, let's learn some tools to help facilitate us in this process of living a life. Yeah.
mm-hmm,
Beautiful, Rob.
right. And
Um,
and I don't think that any of us can do it in a vacuum either, which is why we need these communities of practice, communities. Like even the community I had as a kid on 91st Avenue in Queens, right? Helping me to navigate the world. There was something going on in my own head, something going on internally that people couldn't read, but at least I had that bigger community to help temper, whatever anxieties or worries or challenges I was experiencing at the
mhm,
time, and not thinking about it as clearly as a kid as I do as an adult, of course, because it just wasn't developmentally there. But things do sink in, right, all throughout life, for better or for
mhm.
worse.
Yeah.
Things that happen to us when we're really young will come back to us again when we're older. And some of them are welcome. Some of them are like, okay, yeah, here's some more work for me to do.
Yeah, exactly. All of our experiences are make an imprint.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, um, there's a memory there in some capacity because it's an imprint that's been made on our psyche in some capacity, and it can be
Mm-hmm.
long forgotten. But all of
Right.
our experiences are part of the programming.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm glad you brought up community again because I wanted to bring that back up. So I'm glad you did. How important community is in living a good life is
Mm-hmm.
being in an environment where you have a supportive community that can lead you and guide you in some capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, can you say? I know you just
That,
said something about
yeah.
that. Can you say a little bit more
I've
about community and the
Yeah,
value
I've
of
I've
that?
been fortunate to have at this point in my life a lot of different communities. So I'm still I still have a small community, but a community nonetheless of friends that I had when I was a kid, right? A handful of
Mm.
friends that I'm still in contact with. So we have all of that history behind us, seeing who we were as, one of my friends. I was probably 4, and I'm still friends with. So that's quite a few decades of seeing each other, grow and change and go through the victories and struggles and things like that. So there's that group. There's the community of family, and then there are these other communities. Whether it's a meditation community that I have close by home, or other communities of practice and interests that are, now through even what we're doing at this very moment, right? The technology has enabled us to form different types of communities and share ideas across huge spaces that weren't really surmountable except by maybe the post office or a one-on-one telephone call many years ago. So the opportunity to find your people and be able to share my own experience, bounce ideas off other people from wildly different perspectives and backgrounds has never been so available as it is right now. And I think that's been helpful to me in a lot of ways too. And sometimes there's a lot of crossover I have found, especially on the communities that I'm in remotely, where do you know this person, or say that this person was from Mindful Schools. Were you from Mindful Schools also, or do I know you through coaching or through yoga or through through environmental education? So sometimes those lines get blurred of who's from what community, but nevertheless, I think it still is. It's still they're still all my people,
Hmm.
and I appreciate the fact that I can draw on so many from so many different wells, and when I'm thirsty, and let me see where I can take this metaphor. Draw from so many different wells when I'm thirsty, and really have that thirst quenched um, when it arises.
What a diversity of flavors.
Right, right.
Yeah, all these the beautiful thing about community that I think you're highlighting is the various perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You get to engage with so many different perspectives and learn from people and their perspectives. Man, that's great. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what this podcast is about. Me having conversations with people with slightly different perspectives. Well, we all have different perspectives,
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
and just to have sit down and have a conversation and explore together, we can gain some knowledge, gain some insight, gain some
Mm-hmm.
awareness about something that there's no way we would have known about because we don't have the experience, that we don't have the experience of our interlocutor, and we definitely don't have their
Right.
worldview, their perspectives, and so they're going to say something, even if we, you and I agree on a lot of things, but the
Mm-hmm.
way you word it, the way you say it, the way where it's coming from in you is different than me, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that I can gain and learn something from you because even if you're saying community is important, okay, let's say something about that, or
Yeah.
the way that you word things is different,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to spark something inside of me, excuse me, that can help me gain some that expands my perspective, my worldview,
Mm-hmm.
that facilitates my capacity to deal with the complexity of the world, or to make sense of the complexity of the world a little bit better than I would if I was just in isolation without
Yes.
engaging in conversation or being in community with others. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's super valuable.
I
I don't know if
agree.
I,
And
yeah, yeah, go ahead. No,
I was
okay.
going to say, it just, yeah, for me, it certainly helps me to get out of my own head. And it also
Mm-hmm.
helps me to realize that, my problems and anxieties may be unique to me, but that quality of discomfort and even suffering is a shared quality. So I'm not alone in that. It's not like the rest of the world is just living large and leaving me behind. It's we're in this together, and
I know, right?
and different people have different ways of approaching how we're in this together, and I don't know it all. So you know I'm lucky to be able to learn from others and share what I can share about what I might know.
Exactly, right? But I think I go to the quote unquote extreme or to the end of that and say we need each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we've evolved to be here because out of relationships, out of interaction with each other. I mean, our brains developed the way it has, our language has developed the way that it has because human beings are in relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
to think that we can just do it all in isolation is insane. We might create technologies to delude ourselves to make it think that it's all about us, be it I don't know, digital technology or be it
Mm-hmm.
financial technologies. I don't care what other technologies that are out there. We think that we can do things in isolation, but ultimately we're not. We're having an impact on somebody's lives by the choices that we're making, and the
Yeah.
choices that
Yeah.
they're making, and is having an impact on our lives. So we're constantly impinging on each other. We can delude ourselves all we want and think
Mm-hmm.
that we're not impinging on anybody else, or no one else is impinging on us. I mean, even in our country, where a lot of times the emphasis is on money, making money, 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 money.
Mm-hmm.
I did this all by myself. Well, where did you get the money from? Well, a lot of times you sold some product. Okay, then that product somebody bought it,
Right.
and then
Somebody
also
made it
the
too.
somebody made it. The
Mm-hmm.
natural resources, a whole lot of hands are involved in it. So it's
Right.
not just you. You had an interesting idea, and you took that idea and you implemented it. You created a
Mm-hmm.
organized structure around that idea, and you said you want to figure out a way to dispense that idea out into the world so that you can receive a financial reward for it.
Mm-hmm.
Great, you did that. I admiration for your capacity to
Right.
come up with a
Right.
cool idea and figure out a way to monetize it. Okay,
You didn't do it
but
in a vacuum, though.
you didn't do it in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm. I
Because if people
remember.
was not interested in your idea, you
Uh-huh.
done it.
Right. Yeah, I
You
remember
wouldn't
President
have it.
Obama caught a lot of flack for when
Oh
he said
yeah, man,
you
I
the
know.
"you didn't build that" comment,
Oh
but
yeah,
that's exactly what he meant, right? Was
yeah,
you you had a role in it, but everything that it takes to get your idea there, it's on a lot of people. It's on community, no matter however loosely defined it is, right?
exactly.
Community.
I mean, we're using this technology to have this conversation. If it wasn't for the people involved, the people who are running this organization or this institution, this business, to build this platform, to maintain this platform, you and I would not be having this conversation right now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the silliness of what we say in the society about somebody being self-made or they're doing it all themselves. I'm like, man, it's just so it's comical in a
Mm-hmm.
way that like wow, you can say that with a straight face, and
Yeah.
the world don't look at you like this person is delusional. Like there's something going on in their psyche to make them say something like that when that's
Mm-hmm.
apparently and obviously not true.
Right.
And but oh
And
well,
I
that's
wouldn't
the
argue that, brilliant, talented people do exist out there who have amazing ideas. People are
yeah,
out there that are a lot smarter than I am, and some of them can turn it into a financial windfall, whatever.
yeah.
But you're never in that vacuum that you may
No,
perceive yourself to be in.
I know, right? But that's a whole nother conversation
It
about
is.
what
It
what
is.
what's going on in someone's psyche to make them think that. Oh
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had some. You had. I know we're coming to an end here, but you had a few others. Do you have a few others that you wanted
Yeah,
to
that there was at least one
share?
more thing I wanted to bring up, and that is sort of the idea of play in life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was looking at what what some of my core values were, humor came up, and I think that would be related to play. And just, I think this is another thing that's been reinforced for me in the work that I do in team building and group dynamics, because a lot of it is just, game based, adventure based. I shouldn't even call it game based, but it involves sort of getting over yourself and doing something, whether it is playing some kind of game that that we can learn from, or acting silly with other people, and kind of dropping the pretenses of everything has to be so serious all the time. And life is life is too much of a struggle to allow myself to have any kind of levity or release from that stress. I think is a recipe just for more stress and for a darker perspective on the world. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what I do in that capacity of my work, involves getting people to feel a little more, well, even if it's uncomfortable, right? Try it out. It may work out nicely. And in my coaching, one of the things that I check in on is, what do you do for fun? What kind of play is involved in your life? What kind of enjoyment
Mm-hmm.
are you giving yourself? What are you doing in your life? What kind of moments do you give yourself that are the equivalent of a 4-year-old just dipping their hands in a bucket of paint and smearing it all over the place, right? Just for the pleasure of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that we need that, and that helps us recharge for all of the other things that life is inevitably going to throw at us. And I think it's also a way of forming deeper connections with other people too, is bringing that element of play into things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sort of, in my as a young adult, and yeah, I guess as a young adult, I was seriously starting to lack that sense of play, and
Mm-hmm.
and found it later as I began pursuing other paths in life. So
Mm-hmm.
started finger painting more, and
Nice.
that too has definitely been a help.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, because play is, for me as well, is an important piece of the equation. It's, I overly simplify it. Of course, I'm not defining play here when I'm about to say it, but there's one way
Hmm.
of looking at it. This exploration of possibilities and this open exploration of what's possible. It happens in play, and we're present. We're engaged in that exploration. We're usually in the moment. We're
Hmm.
not thinking about anything else. We're just
Right.
really engaged in what that activity. I know I keep using the word insight in this conversation, but there's insight to be gained from that exploration.
Hmm.
We learn something about ourselves. We learn from the activity that we're engaged in. We're really present. It's a mindfulness practice, or at least
Hmm.
a presence, a practice for being in the present moment.
Hmm.
Um, and oftentimes we are mindful, but not necessarily engaging in um, discriminative thought, unless it's a way of playing with language and words. Of course, you're
Hmm.
engaging in the intellect. But even in other activities, when we're not, we're still attentive to the experience of each moment, not
Hmm.
necessarily this metacognitive awareness of the whole process. But when you're in the present moment, there's a certain expansive awareness to the experience in that moment that is
Yeah.
beyond
Yeah.
words, that's
Hmm.
beyond confining to a particular word. And I'm like, man, I had so much fun. What does that mean? I don't know. I had so much fun. Just take
Hmm.
it for what it means. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't care if I had fun playing a word game with somebody, or I had fun in a philosophical conversation with someone, or I
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
fun kicking around the ball. I had fun painting, or whatever it is, you know, trying to ask somebody to like to define what they mean by that fun, they're just trying to point to some experience that they had that's beyond the word fun.
Right, right. And I would say
It,
that even goes beyond insight, and that's
yeah,
at the level of
true.
engagement, right? It's
Yeah,
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 it's insight in action, right?
exactly,
So it does
exactly.
transcend those words. So
Yeah, and, you know, it's not necessarily some things we can't cognitively make sense of. We can't put into language.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes that sense making is experiential. It's
Right.
feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's so like play is such an important piece of the equation, and because when we are engaged in play, that's what's happening. We're gaining insight. Are we engaged in a way
Mm-hmm.
beyond simply cognitive processing? Even when you're engaged in a, I don't know if you're writing a book or you're writing an article or you're engaged in like the conversation that we're having, it's very cognitive, but I'm present for the most part. You know,
Yeah,
some
yeah.
distraction may happen, but I'm really engaged and we're playing. That's why I look at these conversations. It's a playful conversation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like today, some days I feel like I can articulate myself, and some days, like today, I don't feel like I can. But that's just my
Mm-hmm.
feeling. But I'm still having this playful dialogue with you. I'm
Right.
exploring, I'm learning, even when I feel like I can't find my words or I feel like I'm not able to articulate myself. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. It's the exploration in the conversation, in the game that we're playing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's important.
And I think that kind of engagement in play or any other experience is one of the great parts about that is sort of at least for me is that there can be those brief moments of losing that self of me or I,
Mm-hmm.
and just being one and the same with the process, you know, whatever's going on, the game, the discussion, the work.
Yeah. Yeah. The flow, just getting
Mm-hmm.
into the
Yeah,
flow of
yeah.
things. Yeah. Wow, Rob, we're coming to a close, but you've. I'm going to try to say a few things. Um, I'm not. I dare say summarize a lot of the things that you mentioned here, but you know, I think being reflective, asking ourselves questions about meaning, purpose. I mean, these are the words I'm using, but you know, based on what you're saying about looking at yourself, reevaluating, do I want to do advertisement? Being
Mm-hmm.
open to constantly learning. Um, then again, and come back to that process of asking ourselves those questions, those hard, difficult questions, is an important part of the good life. That in and of itself, that process of going through that, and
Mm-hmm.
then you know choosing to do something, going off and jumping off on the deep end and taking a risk and doing something different, leaving something that you feel like wasn't fulfilling to go and do something else where you feel like you can serve others, which is another piece of the equation for you,
Mm-hmm.
is having the courage to follow your heart, um, and jumping off on the deep end. That's an important part of the good life. And serving others, helping others. For you, it seems like an important part of the good life. Being in community with others, being able to take multiple perspectives, learning. You brought that up, and in the process of learning, you got to feel some discomfort. Maybe there's some suffering there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when I talk about suffering, I'm talking about discomfort, and there's a broad spectrum of discomfort, for sure. But yeah, you know that's going to be there. Sometimes when you want something in life that's going to benefit you, you have to feel uncomfortable for a little while in order to get that thing.
Yeah.
Like you're, you know, starting the uh, coaching, or even when you first started teaching. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's enjoyable. You woke up in the morning, you felt good, but it was still hard, still uncomfortable.
Indeed.
And being able to continue through that's a part of the good life, folks.
Mm-hmm.
And being playful, and exploring what's possible, being creative in that exploration. And there's a lot to learn and gain from that. I think that's a beautiful way of looking at a life worthy of living, Rob.
Well, yeah, it too is an ongoing process, and that's what
Right.
I want to keep reminding myself. And I'm really happy for
Hmm.
the opportunity to share those ideas with you today. And it also helps just to reinforce,
Right.
my own line of thinking, or sometimes question my own line of thinking.
Right.
Hmm.
See, this is it, folks. This to me, this is the good life right here. This time that we've had to have this conversation, and yeah, you said things that I've thought about before, but the way you said it, the moment you said it, saying it today at this time is landing with me differently. It's great, man.
Hmm.
It's I think it's beautiful, and I hope the audience gets something out of these types of conversation because it's the process of the conversation. And you might have heard things multiple times and from multiple people in slightly different ways, but the way it lands today and the way it lands from Rob's experience may be different
Hmm.
than how it lands from my experience and my way of wording it, my voice. So I think it's important that we have these types of conversations. So, do you have any final words that you would like to share with the audience today before we sign off?
You summed up my the line of thinking I shared today so well. I would just say, keep playing and keep feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Stay in the growth zone and see the benefits that can be found there.
Awesome. This has been great, Rob. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I
I've
have
thoroughly enjoyed
very
it.
much. Thanks, Broderick. This
Yeah.
has been great.
It's Yeah, I always learn something. I love it. I feel when you say you feel blessed, or you didn't use the word blessed, but I
I did
think
use the
I'm
word
using the
blessed
word.
once.
You
It's
did?
not a
Okay,
word not a
okay.
word I bring up a lot, but it seemed to be appropriate for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel blessed too, man. I feel blessed to be able to have conversations with people like yourself and learn. I think we're very similar in that. I consider myself introverted, but there's something about interacting and connecting with others, especially when you're helping. You feel like you're helping, you're assisting, you're serving them. It's a blessing. It is a
Hmm.
blessing for me too, to be able to do that. And in this case, I'm not helping you in this case, but the interacting and the engagement in the conversation is a blessing, man. So thank you for sharing your knowledge, your thoughts, your wisdom with us today.
I'm more than happy to do it, and you definitely are. Just being here and having this conversation, you're helping me. So don't
You're
forget
very
that.
generous. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.